Introduction: The Ghost at the Feast. My name is Oliver. I'm 28. And for most of my life, I've been the invisible one in my family. You know the type. The one people forget to text, the one left out of group photos, the one they remember only when they need a ride or a favor. Never when it actually matters. I grew up with a mom who possessed a sharp tongue and an incredibly selective memory. Somehow, she remembered every single mistake I made, but she conveniently forgot every award, every time I helped her, every birthday card I saved up for. My sister, Ava, was the polished counterpart. She learned early that playing perfect, the smiles, the curtsies, the easy A grades, got her treated like royalty. I was the opposite, quiet, skeptical, and frankly, too blunt for my own good. That didn't sit well in our family culture, where smiles were currency and the truth was a burdensome nuisance. For years, I played the part, trying desperately to earn my seat at the table. I brought pies to dinners I wasn't invited to, gifts to birthdays where no one noticed my arrival, and compliments to relatives who never once managed to get my name right. I thought if I just tried hard enough, they would finally see me. But by the time I hit 25, the veil had lifted. My place at that table was never going to be permanent. Still, there's a certain kind of ache that doesn't fully go away, no matter how logically you understand the situation. Act 1. The Door Slam. Last year, as Thanksgiving approached, I debated whether to go. My cousin Maya was the only person in that entire web of relatives who genuinely treated me like a human being. She was 2 years younger, but more emotionally mature than half the adults in the room. We'd grown closer over the years, sharing honest check-ins and whispered calls about the family's hypocrisy. "You better show up," she texted me the day before. "I saved you a spot." I caved. I figured, if only for her, it was worth showing up one last time. I drove the 40 minutes out to my uncle's house. It was classic suburbia, manicured lawn, the tacky inflatable turkey in the yard, and that unmistakable scent of butter, spices, and simmering tension wafting out the open windows. I parked 3 houses down, my usual spot, carrying a bottle of wine I knew no one would touch. As I approached the front steps, I saw them through the screen door. My mom, my aunt, my sister, my uncle, laughing, talking, smiling like it was a photo shoot for Dysfunctional Families Anonymous. I didn't expect a parade. But what happened next wasn't just cold. It was deliberate. As I reached for the doorknob, the door opened, just a crack, and there was my Uncle Ron, filling the frame like a human roadblock. He didn't greet me, didn't smile. He just looked at me with that smug little twitch in his mouth and said, "You're not family anymore, Oliver. You need to leave." I actually laughed. I thought it was a joke, waiting for the punchline. But he didn't move. Behind him, I saw my mom pass 2 plates across the dining table. One of them had the name card I recognized as mine. She handed it, laughing, to Ava's boyfriend, a guy I'd only met twice. My chair, my seat, was filled before I even got a foot in the door. "I'm serious," Uncle Ron added, his voice dropping slightly. "You showing up just causes tension. It ruins the mood." I blinked. "Causes tension? I haven't even walked in yet." He gave a mock sympathetic shrug. "Let's not make this worse than it needs to be. Just head home, okay?" I looked over his shoulder, locking eyes with my mom. She didn't flinch. She didn't call him off. She just raised an eyebrow and took a sip of her wine like she was watching a mildly interesting TV show. For a long moment, I thought about fighting back, about making a scene, yelling, or just smashing the wine bottle on the porch. But I didn't. Instead, I did something that caught even me off guard. I nodded, calmly, quietly. I stepped back, walked down those steps with a bottle still in my hand, got in my car, and drove exactly 2 blocks before pulling over. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but with something colder, something more final. I had seen all I needed to see. I wasn't just a placeholder. I was a joke, a scapegoat when they needed someone to criticize, and an empty chair when they needed a space filled. Act 2. The receipts. But here's the critical difference. I had something they didn't know about. Months ago, I'd been quietly preparing for the moment I stopped trying. Something Maya and I had talked about more than once. She once told me, if we ever wanted to break the illusion, all it would take is one spark. A few months prior, after years of being gaslit, lied about, and talked down to, I'd started collecting receipts. Not out of paranoia, but because I was tired of being told my memory was wrong. I recorded casual conversations. I saved texts. I took screenshots. I had voice memos of my mom telling Ava she should take credit for something I'd done. I had a clip of Uncle Ron saying I only showed up for handouts, even though I had never once asked them for anything. The Thanksgiving message I sent wasn't just a note. It was a 5-minute compilation, the greatest hits of family hypocrisy. I had stitched together video clips and audio recordings with context, timestamps, and just enough raw silence between the insults to let the cruelty sink in. I sent it to 7 specific people. Maya, my cousin Daniel, his fiancée, my Aunt Laura, my mom's sister, who was always on the fence, and 2 family friends who had always believed the curated, sanitized version of the family that my mother and Uncle Ron sold like gospel. I picked up my phone, opened the saved message, and pressed send. 5 minutes later, sitting parked at the corner, engine idling, I watched through the rear-view mirror. The front door burst open. First, it was Maya storming out, face red with anger. Then Daniel, then his girlfriend, and a few others. One by one, they left. The illusion was cracking, and that was just the beginning. Maya was the first to call. "Oliver," she snapped. "What did you just do?" "You read it," I replied. Of course I read it. So did everyone else. Uncle Ron's face turned purple. Your mom tried to play dumb, and Ava just stood there frozen like she didn't know what planet she was on. Her voice dropped. "Why didn't you tell me you were recording them?" "I didn't want you caught in the middle," I said quietly. "I'm already in the middle," she scoffed. "But I'm glad you did it." She paused. "I'm done with them." Click. I sat there, watching more cars pull away. The next call came from Aunt Laura. "Oliver, where are you?" she said, breathless. "Down the street." "Stay there. I'm coming." 5 minutes later, she climbed into my passenger seat. Her eyes were wide, like someone who had just stumbled into a crime scene. "I listened to everything," she said twice. "I never knew it was that bad. I mean, I knew they were cruel sometimes, but I didn't realize how calculated it all was." "You really didn't know?" I asked. She winced. "I saw pieces, but your mom always made it seem like you were the problem. She said you were dramatic, that you twisted things." "She didn't lie," I said softly. "She edited. This is going to rip the family apart." "Then maybe it was already broken," I replied. Act 3. The Father and the Money Trail. That evening, I went home to a flood of messages, some angry, some apologetic, a few utterly confused. The silence from my mom, Ava, and Uncle Ron was louder than any of them. The next morning, my mom posted her usual long status on Facebook about betrayal, misunderstanding, and private matters being aired for attention. The comments called me disrespectful, but then the pushback started. Maya, Aunt Laura, and Daniel all commented, calling out the manipulation and sharing their own stories. The thread exploded. The tide had shifted. For once, people saw the truth too. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, I got an unexpected knock at my door. It was my dad. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. He looked older, his shoulders slumped. "Hi," he finally muttered. "Didn't expect to see you," I said, stepping aside just enough for him to enter. He scanned the apartment, clean, quiet, filled with the things that made me happy. The framed photo of Maya and me, the records on the shelf. I saw the video or clips of it, he said, sitting heavily on the edge of my couch. Your mom, she's losing her mind over this. Says you set her up. Says you twisted everything. I leaned against the counter. Did I? He rubbed the bridge of his nose. I don't know, Oliver. I mean, I knew things were bad between you two, but hearing it like that, it was hard to listen to. Hard for who? I asked, folding my arms. He looked up at me, because it made me realize I let it happen for years. There it was, the first real sentence my father had ever said that felt like an admission instead of a dismissal. You remember when you were 13 and your mom threw out your art portfolio? He asked. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I drew a cartoon of her yelling at me. That was it. He let out a dry, pathetic laugh. She told me you'd drawn something disrespectful. I believed her. Never even asked to see it. That was the pattern, I said. She'd say something, you'd nod. Ava would play along, and I'd be left trying to figure out if I was crazy or just not worth the truth. He sighed. I can't fix what happened, but I wanted you to know. I see it now. I wish I'd said something sooner. I appreciate you saying that, I replied. But I don't know what you want from me. I guess I wanted to see how you're doing. They're planning damage control. They think if they just wait it out, people will move on. And will they? I raised an eyebrow. Some already have. Some are scared to pick sides. But a few. They're furious, especially with what you said about the money. Ah, the money! What I hadn't mentioned to anyone outside that original message was the money trail. For years, I had been giving quiet financial support to several family members. Rent, car repairs, even a small, never repaid loan to Ava when she lied about needing to escape an abusive relationship. I did it because I was desperate to earn my place. That stopped 3 months ago. The video I sent out included a final, devastating line. This is why I stopped paying for your lives. They're saying you're punishing them, my dad said. They punish themselves, I replied. I just stopped rewarding it. He didn't argue. He stood up. I should go. I just wanted you to know you were right about all of it. If there's ever a way back for us, I hope you'll let me take it. He left. I stood there, knowing the family wasn't done yet. Thanksgiving was the spark, but Christmas was around the corner, and they were about to be reminded that I hadn't even started yet. Act 4. The final severance. By the time December rolled around, the family Christmas plan chat was utterly silent. I wasn't invited, of course, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel the familiar ache of exclusion. I was free now, free from obligation, from expectation, from the heavy weight of being the family's emotional punching bag. But I wasn't done. The recordings had forced conversations, but they hadn't forced change. They were hiding, waiting for the drama to pass. So, I made sure they couldn't. I started with the money, quietly, methodically, and without warning. First, the $3,000 loan to Ava. I sent her a formal letter through my lawyer reminding her that since her original claim of needing to escape an abusive relationship was proven to be a lie, she was still with the guy who sat in my chair at Thanksgiving. The loan was now due. 60 days to repay. No interest, just a paper trail. Next, Uncle Ron. I canceled the recurring bank transfer that had been covering part of his property tax. He never asked for help directly. Too proud, but I'd stepped in years ago. On December 3rd, his bank declined the payment request. My mother, though, was the biggest one. For 5 years, I'd been covering the lease on her car. She never thanked me. It was simply expected as my filial duty. She didn't know the car was still in my name. On December 10th, I repossessed it. The phone calls came in like fireworks. First, Ava, shrill and furious. Then Uncle Ron, trying to reason with me like I was a child. And finally, my mother. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just called and said, "So, this is who you really are?" And I replied, "No. This is who you made me become." Click. Christmas Eve came, and I didn't sit alone. I spent it with Maya and a few of our friends, making dinner, lighting candles, and exchanging gifts that didn't need to impress anyone. It was the warmest holiday I'd had in years. Around midnight, Maya leaned her head on my shoulder. "They called me," she said softly. "Your mom said I was choosing sides, that I was tearing the family apart." "You are," I said, "the part that needed to be torn down." The next morning, my mom wrote another long post on Facebook, a final performance of polished denial, claiming pain and false narratives. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Aunt Laura posted her own status. Short but pointed. Asterisk, sometimes the only way to fix a broken family is to stop pretending it's not broken. Proud of you, Oliver. Asterisk. Daniel posted a screenshot of one of the texts my mom had sent him years ago bad-mouthing me, right after I helped him pay for college books. The caption was simple. Asterisk, we all saw it. We just didn't want to admit it. Asterisk. More and more people began commenting and reaching out. It was like lifting the lid off a pressure cooker. Everyone had stories. Everyone had scars. And now, they weren't afraid to share them. A week after Christmas, I got a handwritten letter from my mom. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. She said I was destroying the family's reputation and that there were consequences to embarrassing people in public. I folded the letter once and dropped it in the trash. The truth was winning on its own. By the time New Year's Eve rolled around, the family had split into two camps. There were the ones who clung to the old ways, and then there were the ones who finally opened their eyes. Maya hosted a brunch in January, and over 20 people showed up. Uncle Ron wasn't one of them. Neither was Ava. Neither was my mother. I've had to grieve, not just the loss of a family I never truly had, but the version of me that kept waiting for their love to come wrapped in approval. I let that version die, buried with the guilt, the people-pleasing, and the endless ache for validation. Now, I'm living. I started a small freelance business. Maya and I are closer than ever. And every so often, someone reaches out, someone who saw what happened, who recognized their own family in my story, who says, "Thank you for saying something." So, if you're reading this and thinking about the family members who mock you, who use your love like a leash, or who only call when they need something, listen to me. You don't owe anyone your silence to keep the peace they never gave you. I didn't lose a family. I shed one. And in the quiet that followed, I finally heard my own voice again. Clear, unapologetic,